Hey guys, Mike with Become the Night. Welcome back to another video. Just a heads up, tomorrow, my band Crusade will be dropping their new single, Betrayal. We've been working very hard on this, one of the reasons why the uploads have been a little more sparse this month. And it's our first track produced by Casey Sable. Links to his stuff are in the description below. You can pre-save our track down there, but let's get into the video first. So Rick Beato uploaded a video about a week ago saying that Jimi Hendrix wouldn't be famous today. Fully agree with that statement. He was quoting an interview from this famous bassist he was talking to, and they were talking about musicianship and playing an instrument are not nearly as valued as they used to be. Just as a broad statement that is eminently obvious. Rick elaborated a little further, but not a ton. He went on listing a ton of people from the 70s and the 80s, and I think some from the 90s, of people who were like mainstream, extremely famous, and they were known for being musicians and instrumentalists, as opposed to today, he could only name three, which were Tosin Abasi, Mateus Asado, Tim Henson of Polyphia. None of them were like mega superstardom the way that you would get from, say, Billy Gibbons of ZZ Top. And at the end of the video, he says,
"Love to hear your thoughts."
So here's some of my thoughts, Rick. I think the most glaring thing to look at right off the bat is how has the industry changed? One of the most massive differences, which you actually highlight in your interview with Ted Gioia. By the way, if you haven't seen that, you definitely need to listen to that interview. So much of the focus of music today has gone away from the actual music creation part and everything to do with selling it after it's already been made. Turning artists into content creators, making artists just the face and the presented part of the package that is all of the people working hard behind the scenes, whether that's engineers in the studio, engineers live, producers, co-writers, PR and marketing people that are just dedicated to making their physical image look nice. The priorities of the industry have changed such that they're now much more oriented towards selling than they are towards creating. And as you've talked about in a few different videos, all of these PR scams, these campaigns to drum up fake drama in order to drive views towards a video or towards a song, really come down to the fact that that's way easier for the lowest common denominator person to grasp onto. It's a lot easier to get emotionally engaged by what's going on. These two people that are very famous are about to have a very public spat. That's something I can relate to. That engages my amygdala. Whereas not every person can grasp onto the engagement of creating something on a musical instrument. That's also why not everyone wants to play a musical instrument. Not everyone's interested in it, but everyone's interested in people bad talking one another. It boils it down to that simply. But I think that might be getting a little bit too far away from the point. The point is that's one of several contributing factors as to why musicianship is not nearly as prized anymore. A big part of that also has to do with a lack of exposure during music education. Music programs have been getting cut over the last few decades. That's not new news. I think probably the biggest thing that I have talked about before multiple times, it is way easier to create music than it ever has been, and you absolutely do not need an instrument. As a matter of fact, the cheapest way and the quickest and easiest way is to make music without any instruments. And I also call it the Michael Jackson model. Instead of having a band where you have to have the focus be for people that are icons, smush it down to one. Less crowded, less distracting, less to remember. One icon, the singer, and everyone else is a hired gun. I think Michael Jackson was kind of the prototype for that model that we see today. I think the second reason why we're seeing the degradation of the importance of instruments and why we're seeing less of that proliferated on the internet is because music communities and just internet communities in general are becoming more and more defined, but the more they are defined individually, the more niche they become and the more separated they become from the others. I mean, we talk about it every day with politics, right? This side or that side being stuck in their echo chamber. That's by algorithmic accidental design. You see something that you like, you get served up a shitload more things that are like that thing according to how the algorithm and metadata sort all of that. Conversely, That also means that there are more intensely engaged super fans of the guitar, of drums, of bass, of singing than there may have ever been. The barrier to become successful and awesome has been raised in that regard. The barrier to entry is very low, but how many people actually have the skills or the time or the dedication necessary to be that awesome, to garner that level of attention? So now the performance requirements to even be considered great have gone up drastically. Again, because of the market further niching itself, you are reducing the people who really like instruments, or the people who really like musical instruments, who are actually trying really hard to be good at it, and they want to be the best. And you are phasing out all of the normies. The normies are going here into non-instrument music space, or no one gives a shit about instrument music space. And all of your fandom that creates those musical superstars is being filled up with people that are really passionate about it. One of the big reasons why Jimi Hendrix and Billy Gibbons were so influential is because they did have a normie appeal. They were relatively accessible, frankly. One of the biggest reasons why Tim Henson and Polyphia are as big as they are is because of their hip hop crossover, which is done for normie appeal. Those are three big reasons to me why logically instruments would become less and less of a thing that people give a shit about. You said in your video that you knew pretty much everyone was taking music lessons back in your day in high school and in middle school and whatnot. I mean, if we take a look at one of your other videos that I almost made a reaction to, but I felt like once I kind of pieced through it, I'm like, I don't have enough to really tag on to here. Kids today are very engaged with video games, and that tactile motor skill, timing facet of human skills and adaptation are kind of taken up and fulfilled, not necessarily in a good way, fulfilled through video games. Those same skills used to be got out on an instrument. But that, for me, ties into what I see as a larger problem, a lack of music appreciation. Between the fact that people don't give as much crap about instruments and music, and therefore are far less likely to pick up and learn an instrument, paired that with that tactile response being supplemented by playing video games, you have a continued degradation of what people care about in their music. Setting aside the musicianship and music appreciation part of the conversation for a second, let's just isolate Jimi Hendrix wouldn't be famous today. It's so difficult to make a call of like, well, if Jimi Hendrix had never existed, how would that change the music landscape as we understand it today, considering he is arguably the most influential guitar player to have ever lived? Drop him in the 2010s out of nowhere, he would be old hat. Or would he be old hat? Would we have none of the Hendrix double stop phrasing that we know and love? Would we have none of the wild, crazy bends that go to fucking nowhere that we know and love? My guess is because he is so rooted in the blues and we've beaten blues to death, holy crap, he probably wouldn't be remotely that famous at all. He would definitely have a following, without a doubt, but no, he wouldn't be like superstardom famous. Why is that? Because music's got to move on at some point. Music needs to evolve. The instruments, the musical instruments that we use need to also evolve, and I don't think you have any problem with that at all, Rick. But it puts us in this weird space of what are we losing with the evolution that the, I guess, musical conservatives are bitching and whining about. And I'm sure a ton of people had that argument to say with the invention of the electric guitar, or even the advent of rock and roll for that matter. The fact that comparatively to any of the classical and romantic era composers and writers out there is very banal music. Hence the birth of prog rock. I don't know what the answer is to increasing music appreciation, although making channels like yours and mine very helpful. All of the major innovations in music came from major innovations in music instrument technology, right? I mean, whether that's the creation of the electric guitar, or the creation of different types of electric guitars, or an Eddie Van Halen completely changed what the electric guitar could be. I think the idea is to innovate and invent instruments, right? But how far do you invent instruments to the point where it just becomes a synthesizer in this digital age. The meaning of playing precision on a violin has so much more at risk for a live performance than it does for a person who's playing a synthesized instrument. Unless you want to argue maybe like a theremin or something like that. As you know, there's a reason why these classical instruments have a richer, more demanding discipline behind learning them and executing them than a synthesizer or, say, a beat maker. How would you invent an acoustic style instrument that's going to sound substantially different from anything else that already exists, that's going to be better than anything else that already exists? And how are you going to get anyone to care at all about it? If you can't, the path, in my opinion, will continue to surrender itself more and more to synthesis. There will always still be a home for the acoustic instruments. And I think because there is something built within the human knowledge instinct, within our own emotionality and how we experience music, that is fundamental to how we evolved as creatures. That I don't think will ever change. But I just have no idea how you would go about overcoming all of those challenges to maybe get it to catch on. I can't picture it. But then again, I have never made a musical instrument in my life, so maybe this inspires someone else to solve that problem. I think that's all I have on this. In case you guys weren't aware, I did not write a script for this, much like Rick's own video. He kind of just went into it and just did it. Same with this one. I would love for anyone else to continue the discussion, either in the comments or, hell, make your own video on this. That'd be great. And remember, my band Crusade's new single, Betrayal, comes out tomorrow. You can pre-save that in the link below. See you guys in the next one. Rock on.